Take the Leap is the podcast where we get real about the roller coaster that is entrepreneurship and life. Sure, some folks make running a business look like a walk in the park, but let's be honest, it's more like a wild ride through a theme park with a lot of unexpected twists and turns.
Join us, your co-hosts, Ashlan
and Tory,
as we spill the beans on our own real-life experiences and shine a spotlight on some amazing guests. From the highs of success stories to the lows of epic failures. And hey, we'll even throw in some cringe-worthy, laugh-out-loud, embarrassing moments for good measure.
So buckle up and tune in every Tuesday and Thursday for a dose of raw, unfiltered truth about what it's really like to chase your dreams and build a business.
Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just dipping your toes into the startup world, we've got something for everyone. Even if it's just to make you think, wow, I'm glad I didn't do what they did.
Hey, Tori, and hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Take the Leap podcast. First off, how have you been?
I've been good. It's 2025. How did that happen?
I have no idea.
I'm still in like September of 2024. I'm very confused.
Mm-hmm,
Every day is a blur.
Yeah, I mean, half the time these days, I don't even know where I am or where I'm supposed to be. Or yeah.
Well, I feel like I've seen you more in the last quarter, in Portland than in your home city where you live.
Yeah, previously, in the previous 3 years of living really close. That's very true.
Like, I'm not complaining. I love that you've been in Portland so much. But yeah, it's been interesting. I'm sure it's been a challenge for you.
It's been such a whirlwind and like not feeling, I don't know. There's no place like home, and I'm looking forward to settling in and having that very soon. But yeah, with that, I mean, what is, I guess, a little dive back into our conversation and topics. What is something that you are leaving behind in 2024? Although you just said in your brain, it's still September.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I have like a couple, actually maybe three. I have a few responses to this. So my number one thing I'm leaving behind in 2024 is clients and people that give me the ick, at the risk of sounding too Gen Z. Just people that give me the ick, because you know what? Life is short and I'm done kind of bending over backwards for certain people. So anyway, I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory, leaving that behind. And then kind of related to that, other people's expectations, including my own.
Ooh, that is very true. You and I talk about this all the time, that I don't want to phrase this in a way that's like not creepy and weird. Like, not that I have low expectations or no expectations, but I know things will get done when they get done. Yeah. And sometimes things happen. You get sick. A toddler wants your attention. Right. It just is. Or hopefully those dogs over there don't start fighting and ruin our recording. But yeah, just so many things make it difficult to.
I agree. Yeah. And I feel like I'm almost worse than other people when it comes to having really high expectations for myself that aren't super attainable, especially for the period of life that I'm in right now, having a toddler. So so that's a big one. And then the last one would be guilt. As a mom, I have a lot of guilt, but I already did, as a human being, have a lot of guilt before becoming a mom. And I think just becoming a mom made it worse. And I was talking to somebody recently and telling them that, I work from home and I watch my kid. And so I feel like I'm kind of like I am a stay-at-home mom and a working mom at the same time, because I am.
Yeah.
And the truth is like, someone's like, how are you managing it? And I'm like, I'm not. And that's just the reality of it. Like, I'm not. If I'm doing really well in one area of my life, another area of my life is just not doing well. I'm constantly juggling a lot of balls. And then she gave me this analogy and I really liked it, so I want to share it. She said, um, that someone had told her that life is about juggling a whole bunch of balls, and you just have to figure out which ones are glass.
Oh, that
And I
is
love that. I
such a
love
good
that.
one. Yeah. What can you really not drop? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel. And so getting rid of the guilt, it's like I have kind of this almost impossible-ish task, and I'm going to do the best I can every single day when I wake up. Some days I'm going to do really great. Other days I'm not going to feel great about it, but that's okay because I made it through the day. I'm
Mhm.
alive, I'm breathing, my family's well, and I'm making money. I'm doing things that I love. I'm working on projects that I love. I'm being more intentional about choosing the right things. And so at the end of the day, I have nothing to feel guilty about because I'm doing
Mhm.
nothing wrong.
Mhm.
But sometimes life is just hard, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So that was a very long answer to your
That's
question,
okay.
Ashlyn.
It's totally okay. Those are a lot of good things to remind ourselves to leave behind. And I think one of the things that we, talked about with our first episode guest, Naomi, was this self-awareness and like understanding where you are, where your strengths are, where your gaps are, and really building, structures and supports around it and changing your mindset about it. Cause yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
You have nothing to feel guilty about, like even, we have our ups and downs and our moments and, how things have to happen and how things, when things need to get done by. And it's just like, yeah, we need to let ourselves like, not necessarily holding ourselves to such these high standards that we like impose on ourselves rather than, thinking through like, does that really need to get done, or is that a need, like you said with the glass, like is that needs to stay up in the air, or is that just like a nice to have? And
yeah,
forgiving ourselves, to like just let
yeah,
certain things go of like, yeah, we are not, it's that perfectionism, right? Like we don't need to be perfect. We can be vulnerable. We can, mess up on things. And I think it's all in how you manage it after the fact that's important. So one of the things that I'm leaving behind in 2024 is like feeling like I need to get one more certification, or I need to take one more course, or I need to read this, in order to be able to do that, or feeling that there's like a certain necessary order that things have to be done in, but letting it be messy and let it happen as it happens, and just going with the flow a little more and being less rigid, about certain things as I approach the work in 2025.
that's such a good one. I love that. I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah, there we just don't have the time or energy anymore to deal with anything that isn't serving us.
it's
So
true.
just let it go.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's, like I think there is that judgment. People are like, oh, that's so selfish. But it's just like, why? Why can't we? If we're not doing anything illegal, if we're not doing anything that hurts anybody else, if we are, protecting ourselves, protecting our family, doing things that make us feel whole and takes care of our well being and our mental health, like, why is that not okay? you
Right.
know?
Why should
And
we?
yeah, and it doesn't mean that we don't care about other people. I mean,
No.
you and I obviously like care about each other a lot, care
Mhm.
about our community, care about, our biz besties that we connect with, separate from the podcast. So it's not about being kind of like narcissistic in
No.
holding things that way. It's more of don't spiral, don't kind of go down this kind of path that you feel so jaded, right? As you move forward. Because I also feel like that if you do that where you're getting, where you're like people pleasing and like doing all these things that are like damaging to yourself, it often ends up in people like lashing out, or like, it bubbles up so much that you
Mhm.
and the end up like a little explosive bomb and you really don't want that to be the way that you go into the world, or to just like like disappear. I know that for me a lot of times when I get overwhelmed, I stop responding and I'm not communicating, and I'm like, I need to deal with all of this here and can't, be available to other people. And that's not how I want to be or present to the world at all. as well.
Right. But if your cup isn't full, like,
Yeah.
how are you supposed to pull from
Either.
that
Yeah,
to help other people?
absolutely. Yeah. Very
So,
well said.
yeah, I think it's gonna be, I mean, I think it's gonna, I don't know. I'm optimistic for this year. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like mentally I'm coming into the year with the attitude of I'm done doing things that don't serve me. I'm moving
Mm-hmm.
forward. There's not a lot I can control this year
Mm-hmm.
in the world, country around me. So I'm going to control the things that I can control.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my approach and who I work with and who I surround myself with and community. So I think,
Yeah,
yeah, it's good to reflect on these things for that purpose.
absolutely. Well, with that, let's transition into the next, what I think is kind of a fun thing to think about. I don't know if any of our listeners do this. If you do, tell us what your word of the year is. But Tori, what is your word of the year for
Well,
2025?
it's very similar to kind of the word that you and I had decided that like we were going to focus on for us and for everything else, and it's kind of like um surrounding that anyway. Village is my word,
Ooh.
because community is such a really big thing that we're all going to need this year, and we can talk about that in a minute. But I
Mm-hmm.
think village is another one that is very similar. But to me that word comes out a lot in parenthood because you can't raise a child without having a village around you to support you. And my husband and I, as well as many other parents today, have found that they need to kind of build their own village. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's not just in parenthood, it's kind of everywhere. I think in entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
and especially if you're a woman entering entrepreneurship, I feel like there's not a lot out there that's specifically helpful to you. And so you kind of
Mm-hmm.
have to create your own village around you, your own support system around you, um, to help you move forward and be successful. And so
Yeah.
village is my word.
Village. Yay. That's awesome. Yeah. My word of the year is build. And I mean, this is like, we'll just give a shout out to Mary. This is Mary's words in my brain is building standard operating procedures, making sure your systems are set, delegation, and making sure to build really that foundation. And I think, for the last 4 years I've been in business, it's been about like, how do I get clients? How do I get money? How do I keep it afloat? And now I feel like, okay, we know what we're doing makes good money. We know that we can, make enough money to support a team. Now, how do we really like create that infrastructure for moving forward and to be able to grow and scale and not feel like, oh my gosh, every day is tough, and
Yeah.
and difficult. And I do think, harkening back to one of our previous episodes in last season where we were like, oh my gosh, it's so, like being an entrepreneur is great, but it's also really hard because it takes a lot
Yeah.
of discipline and it takes a lot of practice and reminders and resets and making sure that you're continuing on with that as well. So that is a big one for me. And then I guess we can introduce our audience to what our kind of word of the year for Take the Leap is community. So not only are we going to be continuing to have people on the podcast to tell stories, but wanting to build the community for our course, wanting to build a community of entrepreneurs who find this information valuable, and also making sure to be in community with our previous guests. So you may hear or see from us more promoting what they're doing, because it really does take a lot of people to make this work. And it's not, I think we believe deeply in community over competition. Like we've mentioned before, Tori and I both do marketing. We both do branding, but we don't look at each other as competitors. We look at each other as collaborators, and that there is, values aligned work for both of us out there as well. And we do a lot of stuff together, which is super fun too, as well. But yeah, so shifting back, I guess, did you have anything extra that you wanted to share about Naomi's episode leaving well.
And that was the only other thing I wanted to mention was I really enjoyed our conversation about leaving well. And I didn't know it at the time when we had the conversation, and then when we published it now, that I actually would be leaving a client, and I'm actually in the process of doing that right now. And so that conversation was really helpful to me. And we already kind of discussed it in detail in that episode, but I just really want to encourage anybody out there that leaving isn't always a bad thing. And I'm not leaving on bad terms. I'm not leaving because I hate this person. I hate them, or anything like that. They were a great client for a long time, but again, they no longer served my values and what I wanted to do moving forward. And so I am moving on from them. And I think sometimes leaving can be even more powerful than staying. So that is a reminder, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're still working your regular job, maybe it applies to that as well. I think there's a way to do it and there's a way not to do it. And if you're an organization and you're hiring people, there's a way to really help your culture become one where leaving is not a scary thing, because we all need to leave. Again, I know we already digested this in the episode, but it was really helpful to hear that again as I myself was getting ready to leave a client.
Yeah. When preparing for those transitions, right? Yeah. I think that is like, change is natural. And I know like a lot of us get stuck in this kind of like status quo, change is scary, but it's like, if we accept that it will come naturally, that transitions happen. Like, you transitioned from being like married to parenthood, to having a toddler, to, having your, having full-time employment, to having a business, all of those different things, transitions are a natural part of that, and that we should be prepared that things change over time. I mean, it's like the changing of the seasons, I just celebrated a birthday. We're all getting older, we're shortly going to have a change in our federal administration in the United States after a very difficult election year. I will say, nothing. I remember having this conversation. We should probably dive into this in a different episode once I pull all the data from last year. But like, election years are hard. They're hard for selling. They're hard for selling services. They're hard for selling products. You will compete for space online. You compete for space on TV. It definitely is tumultuous. We had a federal election, but every 2 years we have a midterm election that also does, quite the same thing. And so
it's a disruptor.
It is. Sure. It's a major disruptor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And regardless of the outcome, like, it's always
100%. Yeah. And I feel like we just like quietly forget after 4 years, and we're like, oh my God, this sucks. This is so bad. And it's like, yeah, but that happened like before. And maybe, we had a little bit of a pandemic, the last time it happened.
Yeah.
So that was a huge disruptor, but maybe that made everybody kind of like quietly forget.
Exactly. How we're in 2025. And yeah.
But
you know what? I do want to point out I want to celebrate one thing from this that you had kind of alluded to earlier. And then it just reminded me through this conversation that 2025, I believe, is a banner year for both you and I, because we have been in business for 5 years now. Yes. Both of us started our businesses the year of the pandemic. I started mine in January, so a few months before everything hit. And then you started yours
the following January. So basically 2021. Yeah.
And so
you're wrapping 5 and I'm like 5th birthday.
Yep. And it's insane. It's also insane that it's been 5 years, but it's a really good year, I think, for reflection. And I think the fact that we started our businesses in the pandemic. In the pandemic, have not only survived, but I'd say we both have thrived in different ways. And we've had a lot of different clients. We've had a lot of growth and a lot of challenges and a lot of failures too. And I think now is a good time to sit back and reflect. And especially after this last year, which was an election year and was actually probably one of the hardest years in my business so far. I don't know
Same.
about you, but
hard in
yeah,
different ways than the previous year was,
yes,
honestly.
yes. And I made the most money last year that I've made in my business so
Yeah.
far, but it didn't feel that way.
Yeah,
I had a lot of
totally.
expenses too. So, it just, it's yeah. Anyway, I just want to celebrate that. I want to celebrate
Yes.
us because
Celebrate
we
us.
are doing it.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think Take the Leap is celebrating like 3, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
2022. Yeah,
Is
basically.
when we first started
First
this.
started this. Yeah.
Yeah, and we did the live course, and then we got all that
Mhm.
feedback. Oh my gosh. Yeah, because 2022 is the year I was pregnant.
Yep. Hmm.
Yep. The year I
Yep.
hit daily.
Yeah. Transitions,
Wow.
y'all. We did a lot in the last 3 to 5
Yes.
years.
Yes.
Yes.
Ah,
But yeah, I mean, what most businesses don't survive 1, then 5 is the
mhm.
next benchmark, and then 10 is like the next benchmark. So
Yep.
we've got more to go, but
Yep.
a lot to celebrate. Well, that like transitions us into a new segment that we will now do for every one of our solo episodes, friends,
Yes.
is Tori, what is one win for your week? And what is one thing you think you could have done better?
Yes. So my win and because we
Oh,
were reflecting
2024.
on
Yeah.
2024, I did mine on the whole year of last year.
Mhm.
So my win is that I made more money than I've ever made in my business. And we can just forget about the part where I also spent more money than I've ever spent.
We have to
So I
spend
didn't
money to
feel
make
it.
money. That's like a normal, yeah, a normal
Exactly.
thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was my win. But the one thing that and also that I was like consistently busy with work throughout the year. I didn't
Mm.
really have like a
Any
month or two where I was
lulls?
like, where's the
Yeah.
next paycheck coming from? Like it really was a consistently good year. Um but the biggest thing that I think I needed to work on, and I'm feeling this right now in January as I'm like, "Ooh, taxes are coming up." Um, I have not been on top of anything that has to do with admin. So any of my accounting, any of like my systems, they all just went. And you know this as like we've had this conversation recently as someone with ADHD. I'll start a system and then completely throw it out the window. Um, that was my last year. My last year, I was flying by the seat of my pants. There was there was no um there was no admin days. There was no I just
Yeah.
yeah, so that's the thing I could work on. And that's the thing that this year I'm going to be better at. I have to be better at because my availability this year has changed and
Right.
I need to be on top of things in order to be successful. So yeah, that's my win and the one thing I want to do better.
Yay. Well, I am going to celebrate my one win for last year was that we got this podcast out, and I feel like I got a pretty dang good like system in place
Yes.
for it, and that we kept to on our launch target date for season
Yep.
2 at the beginning of this year, and fingers crossed. We say this is season 2. Who knows? Maybe we can have our act together and we don't ever have to do seasons anymore, but we're going to treat this like season 2 for now. And then the one thing that I could have done better is following up on communication or like over communicating and not making assumptions. So again, ADHD brain. Sometimes I respond to your email in my head because I read it and I said something to it in my brain and I didn't actually send. So that is something that I am working on for 2025 is just doing those follow-ups. And I am time blocking on my calendar now for end of the day just to be like button things up and do all of that and
Smart.
making space for that because that is something I know I can do better moving forward.
Smart. I feel that. I feel that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
What a year. What a
what
year.
a year. Yeah. We hope that you had a successful 2024, that you have transitioned well into 2025. And we want to remind folks that we are here for accountability and support. So
Yeah.
If you are a current business owner and you feel like you need more support, more an accountability partner or buddy, we have the Take the Leap course and we have the Take the Leap community that you can join. And we do talk about it's for people who are starting their business. Honestly, if you're in that 1 to 5 years and you just need business buddies and people have experienced stuff more than you, and you just need even somebody to bounce ideas off of. I mean, so much of Tori and my conversation is idea bouncing and
Yeah,
just being
for sure.
am I crazy? Should I do this? Or, other things like that. So we definitely recognize that it's helpful to have those kinds of resources. So we invite you to go beyond just listening to the podcast, join the course, join the community, and we are here with that help and support that you need.
Yes.
All right. Well, with that, we will close out this episode. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you for listening to the Take the Leap podcast. We hope you found useful takeaways you can apply to your entrepreneurial journey. Subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and keep in touch and follow us on Instagram. If you have business questions, shoot us a direct message or leave us a comment. We'll try to cover it in an upcoming episode. And visit our website, taketheleap-today.com, for more resources like our online course that accompanies this podcast.